If you grew up in the 1970s, you know that childhood felt fundamentally different back then. Before helicopter parents, before every hour was scheduled and supervised, there was a generation of us who were basically handed the neighborhood and told to figure it out. Our parents were dealing with gas lines, stagflation, and a country that felt like it was coming apart. And while they were doing that, we were out, gone. Miles from home, building forts in the woods, learning which neighbors to avoid, and which ones would hand you a popsicle if you asked nicely. Nobody tracked us. Nobody checked in. You came home when the streetlights came on, and that was the entire social contract. What we got out of that deal, the scrapes, the freedom, the boredom, the belonging, is something that is genuinely hard to explain to anyone who did not live it. So let us try. Number 1, real freedom on a bike. Not a helmet law, not a parent jogging alongside. A banana seat, ape hanger handlebars, and an open Saturday that stretched out like a road with no end on it. The Schwinn Stingray, the crate models, the green machine. These were not just toys. They were your first taste of sovereignty. You could put a friend on the back, clip a baseball card to your spokes with a clothespin so it slapped against the wheel like a little motor, and just go. Nobody needed to know where. A 6-year-old in 1979 was expected, developmentally expected according to child psychologists at the time, to be able to travel 4 to 8 blocks alone to a store or a school. That was not neglect. That was what growing up looked like. The bike was the vehicle for all of it, miles of it. Number 2, playgrounds that could actually hurt you. Galvanized steel pipes, asphalt underneath, merry-go-rounds that could get going fast enough to launch you if you let go at the wrong moment. Metal slides in August that would leave a mark. Nobody had rubberized surfaces. Nobody had a parent standing at the bottom with their arms out. You climbed, you misjudged, you fell, and you understood something about your own body and your own limits that no one could have explained to you with words. Occupational therapists now talk about how kids in that era developed something called proprioception, a real physical sense of where your body is in space from exactly this kind of play. The danger was not a design flaw. It was the point. Number 3, boredom as a way of life. When there was nothing to do, nobody handed you a screen. Your parents told you to go outside. After enough time sitting in the grass, staring at nothing, something happened in your head. You made something up. You built something. You found someone to argue with about the rules of a game that did not exist an hour ago. Neuroscientists now call this the default mode network, the part of the brain that activates when there is no external stimulation pushing at it, when the mind is left to its own devices. It's where creativity lives, where imagination gets built. The unwritten afternoon was basically a laboratory for becoming yourself. We just called it being bored. Number 4, the neighborhood as its own world. You did not text before you knocked. You just knocked. The kids inside either came out or they did not, and you moved on to the next house. Kids knew the rhythm of the block. When someone new moved on to the block, you walked over, rang the doorbell, and asked if there were any kids. That was the entire social onboarding process. Neighbors welcomed newcomers by sight and habit. Neighbors also disciplined you, not just your parents. Any adult on the street felt like they had standing to tell you to knock it off, and you did because you understood that you lived inside a community that had eyes everywhere. That was not surveillance, it was belonging. There is a difference. Block parties happened. People dragged their grills into the street and talked to each other. Kids ran through sprinklers until it got dark. The neighborhood was a real social organism, not just a collection of houses with the blinds down. Number 5, Saturday morning cartoons as an event. There were 3 or 4 channels. That was it. And on Saturday mornings, those channels belonged to kids. You woke up early, earlier than you ever did for school, planted yourself in front of the TV in your pajamas with a bowl of cereal, and you watched. Scooby-Doo, The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour, Super Friends, Schoolhouse Rock wedged in between like something you were not supposed to enjoy but absolutely did. And then it ended. By noon, the cartoons were gone, and the adults had the television back. That was it. The scarcity was what gave it weight. You could not pause it, rewind it, or watch it later. You were either there or you missed it. When it was over, you went outside. The TV ending was its own kind of alarm clock for the neighborhood. Number 6, the Mimiograph handout. Walk into your classroom in the 1970s, and sometimes the teacher would come around with a stack of papers that were still faintly damp, blue and purple ink, with a smell that was unmistakably its own thing, the methanol solvent from the Spirit duplicator machine running in the back room. Every kid in the class would take their worksheet and, without even thinking about it, hold it up to their face and breathe it in. It sounds small, but that is the thing about sensory memory. It is remarkably durable. That smell meant school. It meant the particular texture of Tuesday morning. It meant something was about to be explained or tested or discovered. The physical world showed up in your education in ways that anchored it to memory. Information had weight. It had smell. You could hold it. Number 7, Pop Rocks and the Rumor Mill. The 1970s had a food science fantasy running through it. Convenience products felt almost like magic. Hamburger Helper, cup noodles, Tang. There was a general feeling that someone in a lab somewhere was making life easier and more interesting at the same time. And then there were Pop Rocks. Introduced in 1975, Pop Rocks crackled and fizzed on your tongue. Within a year or two, the playground had a story that Mikey from the Life cereal commercial had eaten Pop Rocks, washed them down with a Coke, and his stomach had exploded. It was not true. General Foods ran ads in dozens of newspapers and wrote letters to thousands of school principals to try to kill the rumor. It did not really work. The story lived because there was no way to instantly look something up and disprove it. That is what childhood rumor culture looked like before the internet. Stories traveled by word of mouth, kid to kid, and they mutated and grew into their own kind of shared mythology. You believed things, debated them, turned them over. It was its own form of critical thinking, even if the conclusions were frequently wrong. Number 8, the feeling of being unreachable. This is the hardest thing to explain to anyone who did not experience it, and probably the one that matters most. There were hours, long, full, real hours, when nobody knew exactly where you were, not because your parents did not care, but because that was simply how childhood worked. You were out in the world, navigating it yourself, solving small problems without an adult as a resource, getting lost and found and lost again. That feeling of being genuinely on your own, even just for an afternoon, even just on your block, built something. A quiet internal confidence. A sense that you were capable of handling what the world handed you, because you had already been handling it regularly since you were small. Modern psychology has a lot of words for what has been lost when that disappears from childhood: resilience, distress tolerance, self-efficacy. But the 1970s kid did not need the vocabulary. They just knew that the afternoon was theirs, and that was enough. The 1970s weren't perfect. The cars weren't safe, the playgrounds could genuinely hurt you, and plenty of things about that era didn't survive and shouldn't have. But what those kids had, what that era built quietly and without intending to, was a childhood shaped by space and risk and community and boredom and the long, open, unaccounted for afternoon. That's what's hard to get back. If you lived it, you already know exactly what I mean. If this brought back something real for you, tell me about it in the comments. If there is a piece of 1970s childhood I missed that deserves its own story, let me know that too.